No civilization on Earth has a continuous written record going back more than 5,000 years. Not Sumeria, not Egypt, not China. Sanskrit texts contain datable astronomical observations going back 22,000. Here is the timeline. Begin with the river, the Saraswati. Geological surveys, satellite imagery, and hydrological studies have established that the river system known as the Saraswati began flowing through what is now northwestern India sometime between 90,000 and 70,000 years ago. That is not the starting point of civilization, but it is the starting point of a geographic reference that runs through every major Sanskrit text. Around 50,000 BC, the Yamuna River, which had been feeding the Saraswati from the east, split away. A 2018 geological study supports this date, placing the separation after 50,000 BC and most likely before 41,000 BC. The Yamuna began flowing into the Ganga instead, weakening the Saraswati. Around 22,000 BC, the Grand Saraswati, the massive river fed by both the Yamuna and the Sutlej, ceased to exist in its full form. The river diminished. It no longer matched the descriptions found in the oldest hymns of the Rigveda, which describe the Saraswati as the mightiest of rivers, surpassing even the Ganga and the Sindhu. This means the oldest Rigvedic hymns that describe a grand, flowing Saraswati must predate its decline. Researcher Nilesh Oak, cross-referencing astronomical observations within the Rigveda, has shown that the oldest portions of the text contain references that only work astronomically before 22,000 BC. The Rigveda does not begin at 1,500 BC, as mainstream Indology insists. Its deepest layers encode observations from at least 24,000 years ago. Move forward. Around 13,000 BC, the Sutlej, which had been the Saraswati's other major tributary flowing from the northwest, turned sharply westward. It stopped feeding the Saraswati entirely. This diversion is geologically documented and visible even today at Ropar in Punjab, where the river makes an unnaturally sharp bend. After this point, the Saraswati had lost both its major tributaries. It became an intermittent river, sometimes flowing, sometimes disappearing into the sand. At 12,209 BC, the Ramayana's astronomical observations converge. Over 500 references, planetary positions, pole star identifications, seasonal markers, tested against precession models, point to this date. And the Ramayana's geography matches this epic precisely. It describes the Sutlej as having already turned westward. It describes the Yamuna as already flowing into the Ganga, not the Saraswati. And it describes the Saraswati itself as a diminished, intermittent river, sometimes visible, sometimes vanished beneath the sand. The Ramayana also mentions only 3 Vedas, not 4. The Atharva Veda is absent. Ram is described as learned in 3 Vedas. This places the Ramayana before the Atharva Veda was composed or compiled, an internal chronological marker that mainstream scholarship has never adequately addressed. At 12,000 BC, the Surya Siddhanta records an astronomical update. Chapter 12 describes 2 simultaneous pole stars, Abhijit in the north and Agastya in the south, an obliquity of 24 degrees, and a specific alignment of the Earth's apsides with the Indian seasons. 3 independent parameters from the same chapter, all converging on a single date. This configuration occurs only once in 300,000 years. Between 9,000 and 4,000 BC, the monsoon over the Indian subcontinent intensified dramatically. This is established climatological data, documented in ocean sediment cores. The heavier rainfall temporarily revived the Saraswati's flow, filling its ancient channel through groundwater and tributary runoff, even after the Yamuna and Sutlej had departed. This period produced a secondary Saraswati, not the original grand river of the Rigveda, but a significant waterway nonetheless. At 5,561 BC, the Mahabharata's astronomical observations converge. Over 200 references, including the decisive Arundhati Vasishta observation, a stellar phenomenon that occurred only once in the history of the Earth, between 11,091 BC and 4,508 BC, point to this date. The Mahabharata's description of the Saraswati matches this epic as well. Sometimes grand, swollen by monsoon, sometimes vanished, reduced to sand. The river is in its secondary phase, exactly as the climatology predicts. The Mahabharata, like the Ramayana, mentions only 3 Vedas. It too predates the Atharva Veda. At 5,525 BC, 36 years after the Mahabharata War, the text describes the city of Dwarka being swallowed by the sea. Published geological data from the Black Sea, the Arabian Sea, Barbados, and southern India independently document a catastrophic global flooding event at precisely this date. At approximately 5300 BC, the Surya Siddhanta's equation of the sun, its formula for predicting the solar position, reaches peak accuracy. This was noted as early as the 1700s by Scottish mathematician John Playfair, a separate layer of the same text, datable to a separate epoch. At 5300 BC, the celestial latitudes of the nakshatras in the Surya Siddhanta reach their most accurate values, as demonstrated by Dr. Anil Narayana, a former ISRO scientist. At approximately 3765 BC, the Veda Shaka Pravachan, the branching of the Vedic traditions into distinct schools, is astronomically datable. This falls naturally into the post-Mahabharata period. By 2000 BC, conservatively, the Saraswati stops flowing entirely. The river that anchored an entire civilization becomes a memory preserved only in texts. And at 580 AD, the most recent layer of the Surya Siddhanta is updated, recording the nakshatra longitudes that Ebenezer Burgess would later use to date the entire text to 1500 years ago, missing every older layer beneath it. Step back and look at what this represents: a continuous, cross-referenced, astronomically verifiable timeline stretching from at least 22,000 BC to 580 AD. Over 22,000 years of datable observations, preserved in a family of texts that cite each other, describe the same rivers, reference the same stars, and track the same geological and climatological changes. No other civilization on Earth has anything comparable. Not in length, not in internal consistency, not in testability. The Sumerian king list is considered remarkable for reaching back a few thousand years, much of it mythologized. The Egyptian chronology is pieced together from fragments, with entire dynasties disputed. The Greek tradition begins effectively with Homer, around 800 BC. The Sanskrit astronomical tradition begins before the last ice age, and it has dates. Every epoch in this timeline is testable. The precession models are published. The obliquity curves are calculated. The geological surveys are peer-reviewed. The river data is mapped by satellite. The monsoon records are preserved in ocean sediment cores. Nothing here depends on faith or tradition. It depends on whether the numbers match. They match. 22,000 years of continuous observation, recorded in a language that is still spoken, preserved in texts that are still read, describing a sky that can still be verified. The oldest timeline on Earth was not carved in stone. It was composed in verse.